GM. Can you guys hear me? Ah, let's go. Yes, Gino, it's already Wednesday. Crazy. GM, everyone. Man, I was working and preparing announcements, and I was like, I'm feeling like I am missing something. And then I received a DM from Michael Wagner. Jose, come on. Where's the brew, man? And I was like, shit. So sorry, guys. But now I'm here. We can get the brew started. We can start having fun. And in those few minutes that we have, yes, there's someone distracted me, started chatting with me, right? But yeah, in those few minutes that we have before we actually go into the content, I want to give my friend VB a shout out. Because VB has been hiding from me, evading me since Germany lost its place in the legendary World Cup. He was making fun of Brazil hours only before the game. And look how the tides have turned. Look how the tides have turned, VB. Irish justice always happen. I'm so happy. Brazil is going to win this World Cup. Now you need to cheer for Norway, but they aren't going to win, so not much you can do. But with that said, let's get the brew. Let's get the show started because we have a lot to talk about today. We need to update you guys on many things that are happening across the ecosystem, especially the development of UE5, the development of C4 PTR. We are getting close to the phase 2 delivery. Not sure, Michael, if we already have a date, but we are close. And especially, I want to talk about phase 3 because this one, and here we go. Michael's with us. GM, Michael, how are you doing?
Good morning. How are you? How are you, Newt?
I am so happy. Brazil won. Germany lost. Netherlands lost. So, yeah, the universe is healing. Everything is going great. C4 PTR is advancing. Super happy.
Is this weird non-American football thing?
You know, your president said that this is the true football, so you better show some respect.
That's because he got an award from FIFA. He'll play whoever honors him. So,
but yeah, man, I'm not sure how you are not following this. You are literally over there. You should be watching the game. Super cool.
No, I haven't watched a single game. More important things for us to be focused on, Jose.
True. Very true. And yeah, Michael, let's talk about those things. We have a lot today. Chris just sent us the econ report as well.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure if we can talk a little bit about that as well today.
Yeah, and I wanted to save some space just in case there were some additional questions about the historic expense reimbursement, PIP.
Mm-hmm.
My understanding is that the Spanish community still has some questions, so I did tell Marengo, I'll be here today, and obviously that thread is still open, so if people want to chat on it. But as of right now, I'm very appreciative of the overwhelming support that we're getting for passing that. But just in case anybody has questions, we can save some space for that topic as well. Otherwise, I didn't really have a specific agenda. I figured I would just jump up here with you, Jose, and help you out if I can, or answer questions where I can, and otherwise let you run the show as usual.
Absolutely, Michael. And since we spoke about Automata PIP, I'm dropping it in the chat. And yes, we have, I think this is the PIP proposal that has the most community engagement in the history of the DAO. We have over 34% of all PvP involved in this vote, which is massive, to say the least.
Yeah,
And
just
yes,
on that really quickly, because I think I have seen some questions out there about the abstain votes, and just for the sake of clarity, I do want to make it known that we did vote abstain with our team wallet, which was I want to say like around 60 million PVP, something like that. So a large portion of that abstain is from the team. I did that intentionally because, as I had communicated, we're not going to vote in favor of this for ourselves. I think that would be a conflict of interest. And so, but I wanted it on the record that the team wallet abstained here. So that makes up, the vast majority of that abstain proportional share that you see on the DAO.
interesting. But still, what surprises me is that even the abstain being a huge chunk of the general PvP, the yes vote has 154 million PvP allocated to it. It is quite crazy. I don't think I ever seen something like this in the DAO voting. So
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if you eliminate the abstain from this, it's, well, what's the math there?
yeah,
64 to 72. Yeah, it's 89% in favor.
yeah.
So, no, I mean, solid turnout for sure. As expected, though, this is obviously the outside of, say, the foundational pips with the DAO formation. This is probably the most significant pip to ever be introduced. So I'm actually happy though to see the turnout, and unironically, a lot of DAOs deal with voter apathy. This is super common in DAOs. Everybody essentially wants benefits from participating in a DAO, which traditionally would be like some form of revenue share. But few people have genuine interest in participating in the governance process. Our community is the opposite. By and large, a lot of our proposals have been governance related. Of course, there are the ecosystem fund pips, and I guess those do make up most of the actual outstanding pips or past pips or failed pips. But I think it's great to see the level of commitment to governance participation in the ecosystem, particularly given the dwindling numbers that we've seen over time. Alongside market sentiment and kind of community morale and waiting for game updates and things like that. But we still have a very active community participating in voting, and that's very encouraging to me.
Absolutely, Michael. And actually, in some level, humbling for us. Like, I think I speak for all of us in Automata that we really appreciate the confidence and support of you guys. We know it's not easy. Markets are not easy. Development is not easy, sure not easy, but we really appreciate all the love, all the passion, all the support that we get from you guys by being here in the Brews, by supporting us, by playing the game. We really appreciate this, and we surely wake up every day determined to do our best to make sure this faith is well placed in us.
Absolutely.
And with that said, Michael, we have some topics for today. The Brew timing is very cool. It's very good because it comes one day after our team's internal weekly review of the projects. So we always have cool updates to talk about or share. And Chris delivered it today, the econ report. I think I'll share it in the chat, Michael. Not sure if you had the time to read it or if you want to share some thoughts on it, but I'll be posting an announcement later with the full content. But if you guys want to take a look before, feel free to do this.
Yeah, I think that's okay. I always review these before they go out. So I did read it just one time yesterday. So I'm not fully apprised of, I don't have it all committed to memory, but of course understand largely what Chris was discussing there. We are going to be posting this on the .com as well as the DAO site, and we'll post a tweet later today with it as well. But if you want to share it here for the folks in the brew, I think that's all right.
Awesome. Yeah, I sent the link here in the Atlas and Theater chat if you guys want to take a look.
Yeah, so just a couple of pieces from this. I think, I also read your announcement, and I think that, which hasn't been posted yet, but I think that generally covers the highlights, emphasizing the continued macro headwinds that virtually everybody in crypto has been facing. One of the pieces or kind of topics that Chris discusses is this analogy that he draws to kind of small developing countries, which is, would be comparable to what we're building here at Star Atlas. And he highlights the fact that we've actually had incredible price stability with our internal economy. So you have this kind of market efficiency factor wherein prices are continuously adjusting in Atlas relative to USD. Now that might sound intuitive, but that's not necessarily always the case. You might see a collapse in pricing, both of USD values and of resource values throughout the game. But we're actually not seeing that. So over time, as the price of Atlas has come down, of course, the currency in this small country, it's like your sovereign issued currency. We all know that Atlas price has gone down relative to USDC. However, the prices in Atlas likewise and correspondingly have increased over time to adjust to effectively a USD reference rate. And again, that has led to an incredible degree of stability across the in-game economy. Now, where that becomes challenging is if your benchmark or your reference rate is what you use to determine, say, your profitability. Well, of course, that profitability is going down if the exchange rate between our galactic currency and some foreign currency is decreasing in value. However, just to summarize that final point, it effectively is saying that your purchasing power within the game, which is kind of a core, well, or relative to USDT, sure. I'm sure that's an antagonizing comment regarding the USD or the tether relationship, but thanks for that, Emperor. But your purchasing power within the game is incredibly stable. And so that's powerful for us. And now the question is, how do we increase our purchasing power relative to some USD equivalent? And of course, from my perspective, that relies on us delivering a great product, getting new people into the game, truly activating all of our tokenomic loops, and seeing an increase in asset prices in Atlas and, of course, in revenues as well. So that was, I don't know, I think a very powerful piece of information that Chris shared. It's somewhere later in the report. And then otherwise, he's highlighting that we have had some major changes to our data pipelines. We've had to shut down a lot of infrastructure as a function of cost saving, but we're rebuilding those manually and in a more efficient way. So Chris will still have access to all of that, but one of the key data pipelines that we won't be reactivating is the Sage star-based pipeline, given the shelf life of that at this point is relatively limited. And so we're not going to be presenting any data on star-based at this point. We're just waiting. We are getting our C4 pipeline set up, and as we make that migration to Zink Genesis event and C4 mainnet launch on Zink, then we'll be prepared to provide Sage game data respective to the C4 client.
Very, very cool, very interesting. Any questions about what Michael just said, guys, regarding the econ report or anything you guys want to know on this front? We'll talk about that. Level X, this is surely something in our radar, and one of the main features of the upcoming C4 PTR.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you want me to jump on that one right now, but one I am really excited about the feature that Danny's working on that addresses that specifically.
I mean, we can go there. This is the brew. We do it live, freestyle, Michael, if you want to get the C4 show on the road. I'm also looking forward to talk about it.
Yeah, I don't want to jump the gun on any agenda that you might have. But just since I'm discussing it, it's something that we've talked about on the previous brews with respect to the features we're adding in. But Danny's big focus right now is recreating C4 fully off-chain and offline in a single player campaign mode. This would be similar to completing the campaign in, say, StarCraft or Warcraft. Now, this is meant to be immersive. It is a tutorial, but it's zero risk because there's no real assets. And again, fully off chain. It's as responsive as our Zink deployment is. It still does require those on-chain transactions, but everything in this single player campaign is instantaneous when you take an action. But it immerses you into a story. And of course, as you progress through that story and campaign, it teaches you all of the mechanics of the game. So you're fully prepared by the time you complete that to jump into the on-chain version, start buying some assets and start earning from that.
Yeah, and this tutorial will walk you through pretty much all gameplay loops that we are envisioning for C4, right, Michael?
Yeah, correct. I don't know if I should say this, but I'm currently considering eliminating Holosim, though, after this, because, and I'm open to feedback on this, by the way, Holosim's been a great product, but in a lot of ways, what we are releasing with C4 will supersede tutorial mechanics and also immersive gameplay. The only thing you would lose is the multiplayer aspect of it. But naturally, if you transition into the open world, persistent universe in Sage, then you'll have all of those multiplayer components. So I don't want to say that Holosim is a distraction. I think it was a very valuable product over 25 and 26. And it kind of catered to a need that we had in terms of a free-to-play access point, low risk that allows us to demonstrate the product to a wider audience without having to convince them to purchase assets to start playing. I would also note that the Holosim team was very, very small. So it was a small portion of all of our overall efforts. And it was really the first experimental path that we had to integrate agentic or AI development into our development process. So that was, Holosim was invaluable in the sense that it taught us a lot about coding with AI and what we could build and how quickly we could build it and how fast we could iterate. And again, delivering that free-to-play experience. But I just think that, again, that what we have with C4 can really supersede all of that. And then there's a potential challenge that we would also have in that at this point, the Holosim client is significantly different, at least from a UI UX perspective, from what we have in C4. Now, when we built Holosim, it was pretty consistent and compatible with Starbased, although it actually saw more design enhancements over time than we were able to introduce into Starbased. Given we weren't really investing in Starbased, we were investing into this C4 development. But if we did want to continue Holosim, we would then have to reconcile the UI against C4, because ultimately the goal of Holosim is let people experience the game for free and then try to recruit them into the live mainnet Sage product with the real economy. So these are some things that we've been talking about, but ultimately, I think we essentially have a new version of Holosim that's just fully single player with this C4 single player campaign mode.
Yes, Michael. And as someone who worked really hard on Holosim overall, I think this is a natural transition. I mean, when we started creating Holosim, we didn't have the infrastructure that C4 provides us. We didn't have Zink knocking on our gates, allowing us to have a game where the player didn't need to spend a lot of soul to just play the game, right? To just be able to do transactions and things like that. We didn't have the expertise on AI coding, like, for example, me. I couldn't provide support to the team by adding components and etc. But now everything changed. Like, I'm literally creating codes. I'm literally creating, like, it's super cool. Like, I created a tool that allow me to spin missions in any place in C4 pretty much instantaneously. So all the mechanics, all the features, everything that we learned while building Holosim can now be applied much more smoothly to C4 and actually make it a very interesting game. This is something that we are going to discuss today, like how the nature of C4 is changing and evolving as we bring some of the logics that we learned from Holosim to C4. And overall, I am super happy that we are dedicating our time now to building C4 with all the knowledge, all the expertise that we developed during Holosim. That's my opinion, at least, and I see most of the community agree with this.
Yeah. I also would just say one of the things that I find a little bit frustrating with some of the criticisms we get is that we've pivoted many times over the years, which genuinely is not the case. It might appear that way, but everything that we've been building has been contributing to the ultimate vision of Star Atlas. That's the North Star. That's what we always want to build. We always want to get to the Unreal Engine version of the open world MMO. But things like Holosim, again, taught us a lot about being able to code with AI. And it wasn't necessarily a deviation from our vision with Star Atlas. We saw it as an opportunity to create a top of funnel and a free access point that actually brings people into the ecosystem. That's not a pivot. That is directly helping us achieve our goals of growth in the user base. And so two facets of it. We got to experiment with the top of a marketing top of funnel for user acquisition. We got to experiment early stage with AI development, and this was using things like Cursor early on, and it wasn't until this year that we really migrated into full agentic development pipelines. But I'd also again emphasize that was really a skunkworks team. There were no more than maybe 2 to 4 people working on Holosim at any given time, and that was back when we had 40 to 50 people on the team. And so, given the team size now, the progress that we're making on C4, the opportunity with single player campaign to replace the free to play onboarding, I think that the logical conclusion here is that Holosim served a purpose and it taught us a lot, and now we get to apply those lessons to what we're releasing with C4.
Absolutely.
And I'll just touch on one additional comment from Jindo here. But the other cool thing about this single player campaign is that it does strip out all on-chain mechanics and real financial incentives from gameplay. So I've touched on this in Foundation Room, but we're considering a few alternative paths that would let us launch versions of either the Unreal Engine client right now or this single player campaign directly onto Steam. And I not only do I think that would be good for us for visibility, there's who knows, maybe there's even an opportunity to monetize where the single campaign costs $4.99. And it's something that a lot of people would buy to play through. And again, now we've got them exposed to Star Atlas. Now we can start to expose them to everything else that we're building and the long-term vision and convert them into diehard community members like everyone here in attendance.
Michael, this opens many doors for us. Super exciting to be bringing Star Atlas vision to a wider audience. The tutorial has some really cool visual elements as well. I don't want to spoil anything, but Danny has been working hard on creating some really cool interface and cinematic stuff for you guys.
Right.
So yeah, it's super exciting. The tutorial is going to be super exciting. A game on its own, I would say.
Yeah, I wonder if I should leak this.
Leak, because it's super cool. Please leak. Leak it.
Let me, yeah, I don't want to totally rug Danny. I'm going to tell him I'm going to leak before I leak it.
Yeah, that's fine. Swagner style.
Well, let's do this one. Just something. Just to be clear, guys, this is early, and Danny's still revising this, but it's a part of the storyline that'll be in the campaign mode. And actually, before I post this, just to keep the anticipation high, I think the team did a really phenomenal job with a lot of the video, like cinematics in Holosim, and this is kind of like the next generation of that with better model access. So I think it's going to be very cool.
The hypermatter is going all the way to the stratosphere now. Oh, let's go. I didn't see this one.
So just a little tiny piece, but just
nice.
so you guys can get a sense of it.
No, but the level of fidelity is absurd. Look at this. This is a tier 5 cultivation claim, guys. You see, you harvest, it instantaneously pops another fruit.
Should I do one more?
You like it, Arthur? Let's go. That's my CEO. Go, Michael. No one's going to stop you.
All right. Again, this one, they still require heavy editing. You'll notice a reference to a different sci-fi IP at the end here. That is not what we were targeting, but these are iterative processes.
Yes. Man, this is so cool.
Yeah, obviously still needs a lot of editing, voiceover work, and then we'll have to stitch these videos together so that you can get something that's longer than 15 seconds, but grinding through it.
Yes, no, absolutely. I mean, when we have this kind of cinematic working properly in game, like when Sage comes to you to notify you with this level of fidelity and everything is polished and etc. Man, this is going to be so cool. Like, Jesus. Ben Affleck and Chris Pratt.
So C-Dance right now I've experimented with a few others, like Kling V3 came out that I was playing around with, but C-Dance does appear to be the best for AI video generation right now. And it's right now C-Dance 2.0, but 2.5 has been announced to be released in July. So we're all eagerly waiting for that 2.5 release.
Yes, absolutely. And I'll share something that Danny posted himself on Foundation Room. Maybe someone didn't say this yet, so... But yeah, this... Hold on, let me find it. But yes, it's... Danny has a really special vision, and he's able to cook some incredible stuff. Sit tight because the tutorial is going to be really cool, really insane. Michael, we are 30 minutes on the brew, and we barely touched the surface of everything that we have to talk about today. We are pretty much at the tutorial. And before we move on to other topics, I want to talk a little bit about phase 2 of the PTR. And it's my understanding that the testers already have the C4 phase 2 PTR on their hands right now. Is that correct?
Half correct. It's technically available right now. So if they know how to access that dev build from the SAC server, then they can get in and test it. But there is one more feature that I want to get in before we do any formal testing, and that is the C4 ZXP mechanic. And so we're
nice.
just dialing some numbers in there. I will say, in just some of the analysis that I've done, it's a little bit difficult right now to come up with ZXP just because we have so many placeholder values throughout the economy. And specifically, things like the leveling curve right now is a generic linear 100 XP per level. So trying to determine specifically how we want to reward ZXP given the placeholder values is taking a little bit of time, but we'll come up with something in the next day or so, and then should be able to add that in. And depending on your multiplier and whether or not you have the Zink membership, it's a decent amount of ZXP that you can earn, and we're going to do it on a per phase basis. And you probably be able to earn like 1.5 million ZXP per phase of testing, which is pretty solid, and that's pretty close to what we made available through Holosim as well.
No, this is awesome. This is a proper incentive to play this for PTR. Get ready to test stuff, guys. This could make you a difference once we launch the Zink for sure. And so, yeah, in terms of timelines, Michael, I know we don't like to give dates too much here, but do we envision this coming to the community quickly, like when we had the PTR internal testing phase? Like we were very quick with internal testing and try to get this on community's hands as soon as possible. Is this the same logic for phase 2?
Well, yeah, I mean, you're on those calls, and my perspective on this is I don't really even want to waste time with much internal testing because it's a PTR. Everybody knows that this is a playtest alpha version of the game. And so, and anticipating that things will be broken. And that's why we have the whole bug reporting system built out. So I think we'll do maybe a light touch on it just so it's not completely busted when it goes out. But, I would say once it's ready with all of the features, no more than a week, and then we just ship it out to everyone else.
Awesome. So yeah, guys, get ready. I know you guys have been waiting anxiously for new content on the C4 PTR, but it is coming. So you guys will be able to test. What's going to make it in the final cut, Michael? I know we have been speaking about phase 2 for a while now, but you just spoke about introducing the ZXP mechanics. We are going to go to phase 2 testing with ZXP, the combat system. Is the democracy module going to make it to phase 2, to this next stage of the PTR?
That one's a maybe if we can get it in. It's not urgent to get that one in. I think that one's very, very exciting from my perspective, but less urgent to get in immediately. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, but we have Combat V2 is added, the Nemesis engine, which John actually already rolled out. If you guys are playing, you might see some NPCs roaming around the map right now, but that's technically part of phase 2. The full cultivation claim loop that includes the stimulant output as the production loop, and then being able to apply those stims. And one of the cool things that we did accomplish, which was a little bit challenging on chain, was being able to consume that item from your inventory and have the stat modifiers all apply. But that's all working now. And so then the fourth core mechanic that I think is imperative for us to include is ZXP tracking, so that we can now package this up. And I think we can start to promote it a little bit more heavily externally, external from our core community. I was hesitant to do that early on just because there were many, many bugs, and it'd be a showstopper for a lot of people. And if you're not already a diehard fan of Star Atlas, it might just be a very frustrating experience. So I think adding the ZXP though is a nice incentive to participate in the playtest. And then I am hopeful though that we have most of the major bugs squashed before promoting it externally. But if you can get a consistent flow in your gameplay and actually actually enjoy it, then I'll be willing to promote it more widely. One other thing is we are removing the God mode from the council rank. So now you're going to need to progress through council rank.
Nice. People will need to grind now.
Yeah, I mean, we still want it to be accelerated. So there's 3 different paths that we could take, which is one, you can essentially just request XP and you get XP. I've advocated against that. That's, to me, is equivalent to having God mode. But the other path is we either reward more XP for every activity, so you progress through the curve quicker, or we reduce the requirements of XP to progress through the curve. Either of those are, roughly equivalent in my mind. And so it really just depends on which variables are easier to modify for us. But we want you to be able to progress quickly through the curve so you can still engage in all of the mechanics, but now you actually have to go through and assign your council rank points.
That's super important. I mean, building your council rank profile, allocating the points is part of the game, right? Mm-hmm. So this will give us visibility on how important the council rank is right now, how we are going to move around different specializations as a player, and etc. Michael Darkvoid has an interesting question. So we have a wipe and restarting from the ground when we start phase 2?
Yeah, that's right. And there'll probably be 2 wipes, maybe 3 wipes for us to get through everything. But right now we have, phase 2 is coming very soon. You've teased out phase 3 is already on. Well, I teased this out, but I think you kind of supported me on it. But we have a third environment set up. So we have our, public playtest. That's one environment. We have the internal dev environment that the SAC server has access to. And then we have a third environment that we're testing out some of these crew features, the crew utility and crew missions that you and John have been working on. Mm-hmm. So we're kind of already testing phase 3. And just to close that thought, phase 3 right now largely consists of your crew mechanics, and it will probably see the single player campaign mode launched with phase 3 as well. That's kind of the working plan right now.
Awesome. Guys, do you have any questions about phase 2? Because I wanted to use those last minutes to talk about phase 3, how everything's going to play out. Bullet's asking, is what give XP and how much XP it gives clear in the UI, or is it a hidden value?
I think it's largely hidden. Yeah, I don't think it. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
No, yeah. Sorry, Michael. I was just saying that it's possible to deduce from the actions that you're doing. Maybe Sly can bring you a clear interface. But yeah, this is something actually interesting in terms of game design. Should we make those informations more clear overall?
There's already a ton of information in the game. I don't know if it makes sense to make it more explicit, but you can, pretty much any activity you engage in, whether it's just moving around the map or engaging in combat or participating in the democracy module, or any of the mechanics that are in the game right now are going to contribute to earning XP. I don't know that we need to be explicit with the exact amount of XP you get per action. Just seems like a lot. Now, if we have, as we add missions into the multiplayer version of the game, those missions will have an explicit amount of XP that you can earn from completing them. So that'll be known, but it feels like a little bit too much to specify, hey, if you move to a use, it's worth 200 XP or something like that, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There's a lot of things going on. And imagine when we add the notification system to C4, just like we had in Holosim. Yeah, you are probably right here, Michael. A lot of things to track already.
Yeah,
I'm... Go.
I'm expecting you to give us the meta, Indo.
Oh, Jesus.
But I forgot what I was going to say there.
Something about the XP being played in UI?
Yeah. All I was going to say is, if that's a feature request that enough people submit through the reporting form, then we'll look into it.
Very fair. So if you guys feel this is something that should be displayed to some extent or more visible in some manner, feel free to provide this feedback to us. We'll surely take a look. as we have been taking on everything that you guys send our way. Any last questions before we move to phase 3? Because I'm super excited to talk about phase 3. I think not. So let's talk about phase 3. The thing that consumes my dreams, John's dreams, my dreams. We have been building this like 24/7. We are super excited about it. And the best way to explain phase 3, I guess, is it's a new layer of Star Atlas, right? C4, up to this moment, is a logistic game where you move things around, you strategize or where to place your claim stakes, how to set up your operations, what's relevant for the kind of things that you want to build, how you want to participate in the market. But phase 3 adds another layer to this. It adds a RPG flavored living world feel to Star Atlas. It becomes more character driven. It becomes more how can I put it? Everything becomes more unique around 3 core pillars that we are introducing to Star Atlas. The first one is crew, the second one is encounters, and the third one are the missions. Bear in mind that what you guys are going to probably be testing is the first version of this. The idea of phase 3, like the fulfilled vision of what we want to build on phase 3, is having every mechanic in game being affected by unique crew members. So your claim stakes will benefit from your unique crew members, your fleets will benefit from them, your cultivation claims, the missions that you are going to participate, the garrison that protects the starbase, everything is going to be related or impacted by the crews that you are assigning to the job after phase 3 is fully implemented. And I have some highlights here, like the main points of this update, and I will explain to you guys, and then we can do some questions and answers and anything that you guys want to talk about on this front. So the main pillar of this expansion is making crew members real, persistent characters instead of interchangeable headcounts. Right now, crew members are pretty much like fuel in-game. Like, you need crew to deploy your fleets, you need crew for crafting jobs, and every crew is the same. They are a number. They don't have any unique trait that differentiates one crew for another. On phase 3, now we'll have every attribute of a crew member, its rarity, its level, its aptitudes, its perks, and gear influencing the game. The crew members will earn experience by different category of activities that they do: mining, combat, crafting, scanning, and piloting. So the crew will get better as you send him on those specific activities, and these will carry on real states and provide you buffs on the things that you set your crew to do. So for example, if your crew has a high level on combat, they will help your crew perform better, your fleets perform better when they are in combat in the real world. So they will stop being a commodity, and they will become a long-time investment and identity in-game. So they will be a powerful asset. Like, if you have a high-level crew that's super specialized on combat or mining and etc., you cherish this crew member, because when shit hits the fan and you need to do a mission to save your faction from losing a sector to NPC raids or something, you need this high-level crew to perform on missions and help your faction, yourself, to be successful and advance your faction agenda in Star Atlas. The second cornerstone of this update are the encounters. Right now, the game is pretty much deterministic. Nothing that you are not aware about happens in the game. And encounters means to create this kind of feeling where you are exploring the galaxy and random things happen. Things that are good, for example, a NPC merchant will spawn and will sell you unique items that you can't find elsewhere in game. Or bad things, for example, a Jarvik pirate will be triggered and will start attacking you. This system is controlled by John's Nemesis engine and will offer this idea of a living universe where NPCs engage with you and impact your gameplay, and you can find unique events, unique stuff that maybe only you will be able to trigger inside Star Atlas. The last pillar is the mission systems. The idea here is that there is always something worth doing in Star Atlas by moving your crew and using them in meaningful ways. As we were speaking, you level up your crew, they will become better. And besides applying them to every gameplay loop that already exists, you can also deploy your crew members on missions that will help you and your faction to develop the sectors in Star Atlas, or to gain more influence, or to make things more stable in a region that you control. So, for example, let's say your faction just attacked a neutral territory that was owned by NPCs, and now you guys own the starbase. There will be many missions available for you now that will help you pacify this sector. By pacifying a sector, this will allow you guys to deploy claim stakes with better yield. This will allow good events to happen through RNG stuff. This will allow you guys access to different types of merchants, etc., etc. And in the future, it will allow you even to farm reputation with different factions and other stuff. If you guys fail on missions too often, what's going to happen is you guys are going to lose control of this sector. More pirates will start spawning in that sector, for example, or your claim stakes might be even unstaked and things like that. So we foresee that this is going to make the game live and more immersive, and players will really need to take ownership of the territories that they control. They will need to provide support, they will need to be attentive, and I think this works really well with the democracy module that Michael has been talking about. So now we'll have the political layer and also the in-game layer to make sure that the politics can work properly, and etc. The mission system in this first version will look pretty much like what Erder shared in the chat over there. You deploy your crew, they will have a chance of succeeding in a given mission. There are different types of missions, so there will be social missions, combat missions, data running missions, etc., etc. They will have different odds of succeeding, and they will be locked for a time period. You also need to find resources to start a mission. So, for example, some missions would require your crew members to have enough biomass or fuel to participate in that mission. Other missions will require other resources, and there are a variety of different types of rewards that you can get. We also revamped the scanning logic on the map. So now when you scan in the map of Phase 3, you are scanning a territory a piece of the map that's under the influence of a region and of a sector in Star Atlas. So the outcomes, like the events that happen, the loot that you can get, it will also be tied to that region of space. So for example, let's say you are on Ulster territory, you won't be finding a mud merchant going there. Or if you find it, it's going to be associated with a quest line or something that explains why this is happening in the way that it is happening. So this is pretty much the overall vision, and I wanted to also share with you guys where we are right now. Right now, Phase 3 is already live on our testnet. It is isolated from Phase 2, and it's on its own development branch. And I have to say that the missions are working end to end on this live build. Crew and the crew mechanics and encounters are fully built, both on chain, and the clients are done. And we are in the final operation setup before we can start testing and turning them on. The remaining features, we are still on development and designing work, but overall it's looking really good. Not necessarily everything that I mentioned here today is going to make on the first version of Phase 3, but work there is progressing really well. Joe and I have been super excited to see that what we built is actually working and things are moving forward. So you guys can expect some cool emos in the future showing you guys how those mechanics work for real.
I have a few comments here, maybe before we jump into the questions. I do see a few there. One is just a concept that came from one of our team meetings that I think could be really cool and like economically integrate these missions into the rest of the game. And that's the idea that you could scan, obviously with data runners, and you could discover mission data cubes. And I think the mission data cubes could either be revealed in advance, or they could be essentially like a loot box opening kind of concept. Mm-hmm. So if you go out and you discover an unopened mission, you can sell that mission to someone else, and there's probably some data associated with it, with the type of mission and maybe potential rewards, but not all of the details. You could sell that data cube to someone else, they open it, and then they have the opportunity to go embark on that mission if they want to. So Jose, I don't know if you and John are working on anything like that, but yeah. I do think that's a nice tie-in to data running, and then of course, marketplace activity on those on mission discovery.
Absolutely, Michael. We had a note to build this. It's on our roadmap. We surely add this. This is a super cool idea.
Yeah, and I'm curious which would be more valuable, the mission that exactly what you're completing. Obviously, in terms of price discovery, what you're willing to pay based on all of the details on what needs to be completed and the rewards. But that undeciphered mission concept is really cool to me.
Absolutely. I really like this idea.
Yeah. And then the second comment was just on Earther. I think that's the WoW Garrison mechanic that you're linking there. Yeah, it is. Yeah. And I would argue that yes, and Jose, you can confirm that these missions are intended to be passive. And so you assign your crew and you send them out, and all of the stats and the probabilities of completion are driven by the crew that you assign to it, but otherwise you're not actively engaged in them. But you can correct me if I'm wrong there.
Absolutely, Michael. The way that this works is that you lock this crew on the mission on the sector starbase, and every mission will have a duration. So ranging from a few minutes to even hours or days, depending on the mission, danger level, different, how many crew you are sending, etc. And then there will be the outcomes of the mission. So you'll be successful or you fail, and your crew can get damaged. It can lose health, so you need to heal it, spend resources to to heal the crew member, even necessarily have a time down so you can't use that crew for a while if it gets badly hurt. Things like that, for sure. Yes. For now it's passive, but in the future we are brainstorming ways to make this more active in terms of game mechanics.
Well, and personally, I think we already have a version of this. So, with the crew utility being added to the game, you're going to be able to assign those crew to fleets anyway. And so if you're out actively playing and completing any missions from, say, a storyline or any, let's call it an active mission that you can discover and engage in, we already have a version of that. I really like the fact that this is a passive way of engaging in the game as well, something that you can run overnight while you sleep and you don't need to be involved. And then you wake up and you want to check the game to see, did I complete it or not? And what did I get out of it, So I think it's a really cool mechanic, exactly how it's designed today. And I think there's an application for active missions that account for unique crew without having to make any major modifications to this system.
That's true. There's merit in that. Letting people rest and not paying attention 24/7 to the game. Yeah, I can see. Yes, for sure.
And I don't want to temper the enthusiasm at all because I think this is a really cool feature, but just to articulate some of the engineering challenges that are in front of us here and decisions that we need to make. And I'll communicate where I'm leaning right now, but this is a major architectural change to the way that the Sage program logic works. We didn't build it initially with the ability to import unique crew into the game. Now there's a trade-off for the player. I don't think this is super problematic on Zink specifically, but the trade-off is that when you import a unique crew, it requires its own individual account, which then has rent associated with it. That trade-off being when you import all of your crew and they're strictly numerical units, you don't incur rent on each of them individually. When you import every single crew into the game, then you're accountable for the rent on each one of those transfers into the game program. What I would like to do is give players essentially the option to import as many as they would like, with the transparency and communication that every crew you do deposit will require rent associated with it. I'd say it's not that significant on Zink because, again, depending on where Zink market cap lands, and I think all of our existing Star Atlas users are really the core participants in the Origin season, so you're all getting a Zink allocation. So you'll have access to the liquidity necessary to engage in the mechanic, but it might be true that you don't necessarily care to bring tens of thousands or even hundreds of crew into the game and pay rent on all of them, but maybe you want to bring 10 specific crew that are maybe they're your legendaries, or maybe you have an anomaly, you want to bring that into the game. So I would like to provide the optionality to select whether the crew you're importing is either true unique individual crew or just a numerical unit that you can use to populate out claim stakes or crew members on fleets. I don't know if that all made sense, but really what I was trying to articulate is there is a trade-off in cost relative to mechanical availability.
Yep, no, for sure. The good side is, as you said, Zink should be substantially cheaper overall than Solana. But yes, Bullet, grunts versus heroes, yes, that's the idea overall.
Yeah, there's one other factor, and this is probably tangential to the conversation, but market cap is one component. Just so everybody understands the math, market cap is one component of, and really FTV is the more accurate measure of, say, the cost of a transaction. But the second factor here is really the total token supply, and so I can't remember the exact number, but I want to say Solana, there's something like 600 million Solana in circulation. I might be wrong there. Don't quote me on that, but it's something around that number in the hundreds of millions. And we are, at least as of right now, subject to change, but unlikely, we are planning on a 100 million token mint at Genesis for Zink. And so the way you connect those two is what it ultimately comes down, what is the price per token? And so even though our FDV, we would highly anticipate being significantly lower than Solana's, just given history of Solana, traction, success, growth. You've got Solana's FDV, but they have, call it 6 times the amount of tokens. And so even if we were call it an equivalent market cap, our FDV to Solana, our token price would be 6 times higher at Genesis than Sol is, simply because of the way that math works out. So I'm communicating all of this just to say that FDV alone is not going to determine what the total cost of a transaction or rent will be. There's that secondary factor of our total token supply relative to FDV, which is lower than Solana's.
Yes, no, that makes sense, Michael, and gives us more reason to grind on the C4 PTR and accumulate lots of Zink XP, so we get some Zink to pay for our crew members' rent. And as JetBlade is saying, it's also refundable value, so as well as transferable. Yes, JetBlade, you are correct here. So yes, it's not something that you lose, something that you can reclaim.
Yeah, very, very true. With the only caveat being, to the extent you continue playing the game, and to the extent, say in the case of crew, you want to continue utilizing that individual crew, it is, perpetually locked up until you're ready to really withdraw them from the game, and then you can recover that rent deposit. That is very true.
Awesome. Anything else you want to say, Michael, about Phase 3 or overall C4 PTR?
I'll just closing with one additional point. It kind of is tied into the quarterly econ paper. Over the last couple of weeks now, we've really been putting some pretty significant effort into econ design around C4, and Chris touches on the initial concepts of C4. An LP system is still a pretty critical piece of that. However, I think it's more likely that we have some type of hybrid system, and I don't, which would imply that there's essentially some uncapped component to the amount of Atlas that you can earn within bounds. So within, we define targets, and we're measuring emissions relative to those targets, and then we adjust levers based on what the total emissions are. But that component would be specifically for PvP, given we have a strong desire to drive active PvP engagement, because that is one of the biggest resource sinks in the game. So the final comment for me is that we've been putting a lot of energy into econ. We've been working with the people in the econ Vantara group and the SAC server. So, pretty excited to see things progressing there. And I think we're getting close to having our emissions model dialed in.
Nice. No, this is very important for sure, Michael. Thank you for this update. We're already over the hour. Man, time flies when you are in the brew. We didn't even talk about UE5 or other stuff, so let's make sure to talk about that next week, Michael. Something else that community has been DMing me, Michael, is about the validators on Zink, so maybe we could also share some thoughts on that next week.
Sure. Maybe I can. I just don't like to have unresolved items. Let's maybe just two things on the Zink validator. On the Zink validator, we are open access and permissionless on day one. We made a philosophical shift over the course of 2025. So, if you're interested in being a validator, I'd recommend going to docs.z.inc. That's the documentation. It gives you all of the information you need to bootstrap a validator. especially if you've been a validator on Solana, it's going to be an identical process because we're not making any Agave client changes or consensus changes. So it'll be pretty easy for you to get up and running. I actually think we're going to roll out with lower hardware requirements, at least initially, until we determine what the network transaction throughput really looks like. But maybe I'll mention this. It's not something we've really exposed to the community. I've had a few kind of private conversations with community members about this, but we do have a concept of a validator license that we were going to sell. And so the way that would work, and we probably should document this somewhere, but the way it would work is we have two options right now. One of those is a $100,000 validator license, and the second one is a $250,000 validator license. Each of them comes with specific perks. Buying the license would get you access to token allocation at a $50 million FDV. And in the case of the $100,000 license, what we would be doing as a team is delegating 2x your token allocation. Now you don't get to keep that, but essentially your 100% of your tokens, which would be staked, invested over 2 years, and then you get 100% from us on top that we delegate. That just helps increase your proportional share of network inflation, as well as any transaction fees generated on the network. And then in the case of the $250,000 license, it's identical, except you get a 3x multiplier, so 2x from us and your 1x supply. So if anyone is interested in that, I'm happy to engage in that conversation as well. But again, these are positioned as licenses. They're upfront costs, and then when we get to mainnet, we would do all of the back end work to delegate the token supply out to you, and you'd be participating as a validator that way.
Super interesting, Michael. I think it's the first time that we heard this, and yeah, we should totally document this somewhere and distribute to the community for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest piece here, like, we're not doing any token pre-sales on Zink at all. I might not even. I'm considering right now whether or not we want to do a token sale on Genesis event, and currently I'm leaning on not doing that, simply because I don't think market conditions are super favorable to an SVML1 token sale. We do have partners lined up for a CEX exchange launch, as well as a wallet partner and some other infrastructure providers. But more likely than not, we would just debut and go live on the CEX without doing a token sale. So this would be really the only path and only avenue that anyone has to get access to Zink tokens pre-Genesis.
You heard the man, guys. Awesome, Michael. Thank you for those comments. It surely brings more clarity over how Zink going to work, especially the validators' knowledge. Mm-hmm. Does anyone have any last questions for Michael regarding Zink?
Yeah, and while we see if there's any questions, just to touch on Unreal Engine, unfortunately, we are still waiting on a build that fixes a number of issues, but Jacob's been working quite hard behind the scenes on that, and that includes getting multiplayer support and our multiplayer servers back up and running, as well as we're coupling this patch with a couple of critical issues that the community's faced, and it's really put a blocker on Super Phoenix Sports from being able to host their events. And so that includes things like fixing this invincibility bug in arena mode, proper spawning in siege mode, and then spectator enhancements to both racing and siege mode. And so we're just working on getting all of those fixed, and we'll have a patch out, and then everything's going to be up and running again on the UE side. Otherwise, Brad's been doing some cool work on this claim stake system where you can place different modules down and kind of build out a hab and build out a claim stake, which I'm only going to tease, I think has really massive ramifications for gameplay in conquest mode when we get there, which is really, that's kind of the next immediate major project we'd love to be working on more heavily right now. But you can imagine a massive multiplayer map, kind of like PlanetSide 2, where you're setting down these claim stakes and HABs, and that establishes like operating positions at the front lines. That makes it easier for your team to get back into battle, stuff like that. But I'll leave it with that comment on the UE side.
Yeah, no, it's super exciting. Oh man, you guys get ready. This is going to be super cool. All right, Michael, we are well over the hour now, and it's time to close this brew. I mean, it was a really interesting brew. Thank you guys for joining us, sharing your opinions, providing feedback. We are still here, still fighting, still developing, still creating good stuff. And yeah, soon you guys will get your hands on phase 2 of the PTR. It's really close now, and things will get exciting again. Thank you all. Thank you, Michael, and have a nice day, everyone.
So people are asking for a code. And
Oh, the code.
no,
The
I'm
code
involved
is
in that.
Iris work already shared.
But otherwise, guys, yeah, thanks everyone for tuning in. Super excited on my side. I mean, we're grinding at full speed here, so a lot of stuff coming very soon.